Welcome to the Nonprofit Digital Success Podcast. I'm your host, David, and in this episode, I have Patrick McCarthy on the show. Before I introduce him, I just want to mention that I'm running a special contest. For every share of this episode on social media, you'll be entered to win a $200 donation to a charity of your choice, even if it's the one that you work at. You need to tag Wow Digital Inc. That's WOWDIGITALINC. There's a limit of one entry per day, and the draw will take place 2 weeks from the date of publication of this episode. So let's get on to the introduction. My friend Patrick is the CEO and owner of Digifly, an e-commerce agency based in Dublin, Ireland, whose primary mission is to help those who sell online, think retailers, nonprofits with shops, that type of thing, scale their businesses on Shopify and Shopify Plus. Having previously brought his own e-commerce business from zero to over 7 figures in just a matter of 12 months, he now uses his experience he gained on that journey to help other organizations realize their goals. Patrick and I met in a community for digital agency owners, and we've become friends over the years, so it's great to bring him on the show. He's a pilot also, which probably has something to do with the naming of his company, Digifly, which I think is pretty awesome. So Patrick, thanks for joining on the show. Where's the last place you flew in from?
Thank you for that lovely intro, David. The last place I flew in from is a good question. Last week, I was in Dallas, Texas, and flew in from, but I fly in from London whenever I fly somewhere. A lot of my flights these days are to the States at the moment. COVID being COVID, Asia isn't as open as it would normally be. So I'm doing a lot of stuff to Canada and the US, yeah.
So from your perspective, what's harder to figure out, how to fly a plane or set up an e-commerce shop?
Well, the risks of getting them wrong are different. But in terms of once you know how to fly a plane, it's I'd say it's a bit like riding a bike, but you do kind of keep those skills with you. Obviously, you need to keep them refreshed. But in terms of e-commerce, setting up e-commerce stores, it's very different. There's every store has its own individual challenge, and every client we work with has their own individual challenge. It's not simply just we want to sell a bunch of products and this is who we want to sell them to. Everybody has their own unique situation in terms of their whole business journey and their fulfillment requirements and all sorts of other things. So it's always a challenging thing, and it keeps it interesting, it keeps it fresh, which is great. But yeah.
So during the intro, I spoke a little bit about what it is that you do. Can you tell us a little bit more?
Yeah. So as you mentioned, I own and operate an e-commerce agency. We're based here in Dublin, in Ireland, and we basically help online retailers either set up new stores, new online stores, e-commerce stores, or optimize their existing ones, or migrate from another platform potentially. We exclusively work with Shopify. Reason being is that my background is in aside from the flying side of things, I obviously do that, but I have a background in web design as well. And over the years, obviously worked with various different platforms. And then when I shifted into e-commerce, I started looking at various different options there as well, and kind of gravitated towards Shopify, just because of it is easy to get in. And even if somebody without any technical knowledge, it's actually quite easy to set up a Shopify store. Where we come in, though, is actually then when we work with slightly bigger brands and bigger companies who really want to customize their offering, but still using Shopify, but which then requires some custom design and development, which is where we come in. And we also, we have a certain amount of expertise around actual e-commerce strategies, and we can bring those to the table as well. So that's primarily what we do, is we build Shopify stores for clients. We also do a bit of digital marketing specifically around e-commerce, the likes of email marketing, customer retention strategies, and a bit of customer acquisition using things like Google Shopping ads, again, specifically e-commerce focused more so than maybe other industries.
When you're working with clients and they come to you and we need help with our Shopify site, we need it to look better, we need to optimize the sales process, or whatever that happens to be, who's your typical client in terms of size?
Yeah, good question. We've, and again, I mentioned that I was doing a lot of web design over the past few years, and we shifted into e-commerce as an e-commerce agency, probably only probably about 4 or 5 years ago. And in the initial years of that, we were taking pretty much anybody that was willing to work with us on board. And over the years, we've grown a decent portfolio of e-commerce clients. And with that, behind us, we're able to start looking at bigger brands and bigger companies. So now, I mean, ideally, we're looking at companies that are doing it at least €1 million in revenue per year, which is I've forgotten what the Canadian conversion rate is at the moment, probably about 1.3, maybe 1.4, or something like that. And are with a company headcount of at least maybe 15 to 20 people in it. And upwards of that. So we work with that on probably the lower end, and then getting up, to hire even potentially 8-figure companies as well. So that's where we are at the moment.
From a nonprofit perspective, I think they have a lot of things that they can sell. If it's a hospital, they have like arts and crafts shops, or maybe there's programs where children or seniors are producing artwork and they sell it to raise money for their charity. So I think there's a lot of stuff that they could actually post online. What's your opinion in terms of like, is it worth them exploring that?
Yeah, I mean, and you're absolutely right. I mean, probably e-commerce isn't the first thing you think of when you mention nonprofit organizations. But as you say, there are certain scenarios where it is potentially a fit. Like, for instance, if you mentioned a hospital, and if they have a shop on or a store inside the hospital, a gift store or something like that, then they could start selling those products online. I mean, there's potential other aspects in Shopify is obviously very focused towards product-based selling, and physical products as well. But you can also sell digital products. So you could use it to sell tickets to events. You could use it to do an online auction, something like that, if you were auctioning off certain things. Or so there are ways and means of doing it. I mean, traditionally, Shopify is set up for physical product selling, but it does have the ability to be utilized in many different ways as well, from in terms of generating revenue around selling, not just physical products. Yeah.
A lot of nonprofits here have some mandates from government or funding organizations to produce educational materials for use in the public. Maybe monetizing that. If they create an ebook, they can sell it for $2 or $5, and just have it automatically shipped electronically over to the people, or enabled for download, that type of thing. I think there's a really great place in the nonprofit world for e-commerce to help them backfill some of the funding needs that they might need. And over the last couple of years, a number of clients have come to me to ask us, hey, what about doing an online auction? What are your thoughts on leveraging Shopify for that?
Yeah, I mean, and I alluded there a second ago. I mean, that there is the possibility of doing something like an online auction using Shopify. Now, like, Shopify is obviously it's a platform-based solution, and it has its limitations when you just use what you get out of the box with Shopify. The great thing about Shopify, though, is that it's supported by a huge ecosystem of third-party applications, which are designed by third-party developers. But they have to go through a rigorous vetting and approval process to actually get themselves into be an approved Shopify application that you can bolt on, essentially, to give added functionality to your Shopify store. And one of those things is like adding on online auction functionality, so that you can create some timed auctions on your website, and have other auction functionality built in as well. Again, as I said, it doesn't come out of the box with Shopify, but by adding on a third-party app, albeit you do have to pay a little bit extra per month for the times that you'd be using it. But for that added functionality, it's generally worth it. And as opposed to, and because it's a vetted and approved app by Shopify, has to go through that rigorous process. That it's almost always really well thought out, coded development add-on to put on your website. Yeah.
A lot of people in the nonprofit world are running WordPress. There's a reason it powers, like, I think almost 40% of the internet now.
Yeah.
And so how does Shopify stand up against WooCommerce, which is probably the number one WordPress-based e-commerce ecosystem?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a good one. I mean, WordPress is almost, getting to be the industry standard in terms of websites now. I mean, it's, as you say, 40% of the internet is pretty much powered by it. So I think, if anybody listening doesn't know what WordPress is, they've certainly seen a WordPress website. And as you say, WooCommerce is that add-on to WordPress to give that e-commerce functionality to a WordPress store, and it's an easy bolt-on to add in that functionality. The pros and cons of both are, I mean, WordPress is such a versatile platform. You can build pretty much anything on it. Whereas Shopify isn't. Shopify is very e-commerce focused. I wouldn't be suggesting to build anything other than an e-commerce solution on Shopify. Like a blog post or a content rich post probably wouldn't sit very well on Shopify, but from an e-commerce perspective, it does what it's supposed to do really, really well. And for us, the benefits that we see over the likes of WordPress and WooCommerce is, number one, it's a fully hosted solution. And it's fully secure by Shopify. So you're not, when you set it up, you're not having to go and find somewhere to host your website. You're not having to worry about how secure it is if the hosting isn't great. You're not looking, all the payment processing is all built in. So you're not having to go off and get a third-party payment processing account and then add that into your WooCommerce side of things as well. So they've kind of tried to think of everything so that it's all in one box. The downside, obviously, is that even though you do have to pay for WordPress hosting and things like that, WordPress itself is essentially free. WooCommerce is essentially a kind of a free add-on as well. Albeit, as I say, you do have to think of the hosting and security side of things. So you do have to pay for Shopify, and you do have to pay a monthly fee to Shopify, and then those third-party apps that I mentioned previously, you generally have to pay a monthly fee. So if you start, building up a few of those to add on a lot of functionality, your monthly costs can go up. But the pros, I think, far outweigh the cons in terms of that. So yeah, I mean, and again, look, there's so many websites, so many e-commerce websites out there using WordPress and WooCommerce, and they do it really well, and they have a huge amount of success. But for us, and obviously we're biased because we're a Shopify agency, but if a client was coming to us now, we would be highly recommending Shopify for the previous reasons I mentioned, especially around the hosting and the security side of things.
I think Shopify is a really great platform. It's a shop out of the box, right? Like you mentioned, you don't need to find extra add-ins for payment gateway and pieces like that. You don't have to worry about compliance and like PCI compliance for credit card processing, any of that. I mean, Shopify will take a cut, but if you're using Moneris, if you're using Stripe, if you're using PayPal with WooCommerce, they're going to take a cut also. So it's kind of like a net on that. Right. So being able to set it up. And I think a lot of people are a little bit hesitant because they want to make sure that the site, if they're going to add e-commerce functionality, that it looks and feels like it's part of their site. They don't want people to feel like they've been transported to, a third-party system. What can you talk about in terms of being able to match branding and that side of it?
Yeah, so I mean, and I did mention a few minutes ago that if you're building out a content-rich site, then having all that content on the Shopify site isn't always the best solution. Don't get me wrong, there are some Shopify sites out there that have some really nice content and a side of things, but it's something that doesn't come straight out of the box with Shopify. So if you wanted to build that in, it can be built in. It just requires a little bit of custom development. What sometimes a lot of companies do, if they have domain.com, but matching the branding completely to the original website as well. That said, as I said, you can build in content into the Shopify site. It's just it sometimes requires a little bit more development. And in terms of like the other platforms out there, the other e-commerce platforms out there, there's as I mentioned, there's loads of platforms that will do e-commerce. Obviously, WordPress with WooCommerce. You've got Magento as well, which is a massive, kind of a massive platform. Which problem with Magento is it requires a huge amount of initial building and capital outlay to get a site up and running. You've got the likes of Wix and Squarespace, which are very easy to get into, but then they're really limited in terms of design and functionality. So Shopify sits in a kind of in the middle a little bit in terms of it's very easy to get up and running with Shopify, but it has the ability to scale. And you can start off as a small to medium sized business and scale as high as you can dare imagine without there being limitations, because they have various different plans and they have an enterprise solution as well that you can move into once you start getting into the realms of even $1 billion companies that are using Shopify for their e-commerce solutions.
Yeah, so I think as a takeaway from what you just said, you can have a hybrid approach, right? If you love your WordPress website and you don't want to ditch it because you want to add some e-commerce, not a problem, right? Put a link, create a subdomain. That's a free thing as long as your IT knows what they're doing. They can set it up, right? And you can have a store that matches your live website. You don't have to start from scratch. You don't have to redesign. You don't have to anything like that. Digifly will be able to help you get to that point where you've got a shop that matches your brand, and it'll be a seamless transition across the two of those. So don't dump WordPress because you want to add a shop, because like as Patrick said, Shopify is not built for the content. Yeah, you can create pages with content, but WordPress has some phenomenal builders like Beaver Builder, Elementor, etc., that really allow you to take control over the content. My experience with Shopify is you can't control the content in that kind of way. So if you love your WordPress site, stick with it. If you want to add e-commerce, I think Shopify is a great platform to leverage that.
Yeah, 100%. I'll just add to that. I mean, it is, and as you say, if you have a really developed WordPress website that you love and you don't want to try and reinvent the wheel, it's a really easy add-on, as you say, with something like a subdomain. I mean, the other great thing about Shopify is because it's built for merchants as well. It's built for the sellers, and while we do a lot of work custom developing Shopify sites, once you get into the back end of Shopify as a merchant, it's very easy to use. They've got a fantastic mobile app that you can use, and you can fulfill orders straight from your phone, and I think that's where it really is heads and shoulders above a lot of the other e-commerce solutions out there. That it just makes it very easy to operate your e-commerce store as a merchant, as a retailer.
Yeah, so for anybody that wants to leverage the Shopify platform, there's a lot of really great things in the back end that you can leverage. So if you're doing inventory, if you have multiple things, so if you have books or multiple, I don't know, maybe you're selling umbrellas for fundraising or something like that, you can track the inventory in the system. You know how many you have on hand. You don't need a separate management system for that. That could cost hundreds or thousands of dollars a year to be able to leverage. It's all built in with Shopify, right? So from a functional perspective, you can use that, as well as if you have a shop on site where people can physically come in and buy something, you can leverage it as a point of sale.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You take the example of a hospital gift store. Shopify has their own point of sale system, Shopify POS, and all you need is a mobile device like an iPad that you load their app onto. You have all your inventory is on the system. The Shopify backend operates like a backend, and then the website is just one channel of that. And then you can have your point of sale as another sales channel, and you can sell products directly from inside a gift store, for instance, and all the stock will be managed so that it's syncing all the stock. So if somebody buys something in the store, it goes down by one, but also if they buy it online, it still goes down by one. So you're not running out of stock or having stock issues online versus in the store. The other side, I talk about channels there. The other thing is it's set up for omni-channel selling, which is one of the kind of the big things that people are looking at now in the world of e-commerce is not just where am I going to sell this product, it's like how many places can I sell this product? And it's selling it on Instagram, it's selling it on Facebook, it's selling it on Amazon. And you can link all those seamlessly directly into Shopify, and they just become, Shopify becomes the hub, and you have all these sales channel spokes coming out of it. And with the website just being one of those, it's just another extension, but you can have all these other sales channels as well to help support your business.
I think that's really interesting for nonprofits to think about. You have these really dedicated audiences following you on social, right? Leverage that platform and try to use a system that can generate a bit more money for you. You might not sell, $50,000 a month worth of product, right? But, even if it's $1,000, right? That's an extra chunk of money that you can use to leverage and create other program opportunities in your organization.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, as you say, even social media, you can sell directly on Instagram. So, the classic example, you have an Instagram post that might have some products in that picture or in that image, and you can click on it and it'll pop up a little tag showing how much that product is. Click on the tag, brings you straight to the product page itself, and then you can shop from right within your Instagram web browser and check out. So yeah, that it's all those small things that Shopify does really well. It really thinks about the customer journey and also how to help the retailer make the most out of their business.
That's amazing. So obviously, I mean, I think this is kind of a new-ish development in terms of online sales and hitting out and reaching out to social media. What do you anticipate is like how the e-commerce landscape is evolving?
Yeah, I mean, how far into the future do you want to go? But if we look at the short term, it's, I mentioned omni-channel selling. That's been kind of one of the big buzzwords over the last few years. And again, it's not just selling through your physical store or your website. It's how do you connect all the other channels, even connecting up eBay and things like that directly into a hub like Shopify, so that all your stock is managed in one place. And yeah, obviously the last 24 months or so has seen a huge shift towards e-commerce and consumer confidence in terms of shopping online. A lot of people would have been not that confident giving away their credit card details, even this day and age. But, because of COVID and a lot of physical stores having to temporarily shut down, people have been forced to shop online. So it's catapulted e-commerce a good few years into the future in terms of people being confident to now shop online. And a lot of people are, the amount they shop online, it probably won't change. They're used to it now. They're confident, and they'll continue to do so. As I said, how far into the future do you want to go? I mean, then we're looking into, the likes of augmented reality. And you can also, I mean, Shopify also already has augmented reality functionality built in, so that, for instance, the likes of an IKEA or somebody selling furniture or bicycles or anything physical that you would want to see what it looks like, even down to clothing, shoes and things. You can get your phone and you can see a visual representation through your phone using augmented reality as to what that object would look like in your house or on your feet. And then, you push beyond that into virtual reality and metaverse, but that's a whole other conversation for another day, I think.
So anybody who doesn't know, augmented reality is basically where you take your phone and you load up an app, and it will show you through essentially the lens of the camera what something looks like in a space, or like Patrick said, shoes on your feet, what it could look like. And it leverages basically like 3D rendering technology in it to show you what it could look like. But that is mind blowing. Being able to like walk through a big store, something kind of like IKEA, like you mentioned, without having to go there and actually check everything out and see it all, that would be phenomenal. And to be able to sell something through that medium would be that blows my mind.
Yeah, the technology is getting a little crazy now, and I think it's going to be going in that direction for the next few years. But for now, still, being able to just browse on your phone or browse on your laptop or your desktop and pick and choose what you want to have it sent to your house is fantastic, and it's something that's improving. obviously shipping times are improving, deliverability of items is improving, being able to do returns and things, that's all improving. And there's so many new services coming online as well to help with that. Amazon aside, obviously Amazon are one of the kings at all that. But there's many other third-party providers now helping and assisting and complementing the likes of Shopify and online merchants in order to improve their own customers' experience.
Yeah, when I was working at the hospital, I was there for about 5 years, and we were talking about selling stuff online. And I investigated Shopify. We had our WordPress website. I set up a Shopify site for us, and we had manuals and guides, and there was some training materials and some DVDs and things like that that go along with those workshop books and stuff. But one of the things that always stuck out, one of those things that always stuck out for me was what's going to happen when somebody isn't happy with the product, right? What is the fulfillment process? Who's going to be boxing up the product and mailing it out? And who's going to deal with returns? So I think that's something really important for anybody that's listening to this, whether you're a nonprofit or a business, is to really think through the entire life cycle of a sale, right? Being able to be found, so dealing with SEO, getting your products in front of people, leveraging social, that type of thing, through to boxing, shipping it. And there are going to be people that aren't happy with it. Not everything is rainbows and butterflies and the world is great. Sometimes there's a product that gets damaged during shipping, right? It's not your fault, it's not their fault, it's just something that happens. Do you have any advice for anybody on steps that they can do to think about through what that process would look like?
Yeah, and one of the things we emphasize to all of our clients is to try and have 5-star customer service. From not just from an after sales perspective, but from a pre-sale perspective. If somebody's making an inquiry about a product, that they can do it easily. They can either get you on the phone, or they can they can email you and get a quick response to that email. Or a lot of companies have live chat on their website, although now little chat bubbles popping up here, there, and everywhere are starting to get a little bit annoying. I think people are getting used to them, or are getting a little bit annoyed with them. But as long as you're contactable and you can provide a good level of support, that goes a huge way. And then obviously post sales as well. If somebody has a problem with a product, that they can get in touch, they can return the product easily. It's worth so much if you can give that high level of service to a customer, especially if they're a first-time customer, because it's so much easier to get an existing customer to purchase from you again than it is to get them in the door the first time when they don't know much about you. So if you give that first-time customer a really good experience, obviously if it's a product, you want the product to be good, but you also want the service around the product to be good, the fulfillment of that product, the fact that they get it without any damage. And if it is damaged for any reason, even if it's not your fault, that you deal with it in a professional way and offer some compensation or replacement of the product, or and things like that. And if you can keep that level of service and customer support up, it's worth a fortune to you. And that's one of the things we really emphasize with clients, because it's one of those things that tends to be a little bit overlooked. Well, I just need to set up a website, I put my products on there, and then I ship them out, and then see you later, and it's bye-bye. But there's so much more beyond that. And it's those bits that beyond that sometimes get overlooked, sometimes are also the most important parts to consider.
One of the things, I guess I've got two questions, is what is a good response time, right? Like if somebody were to email you or open up a chat bot or get in touch in some way, hearing back from you 3, 4, 5 days later, that doesn't feel like good customer support. So, first question is, what's a good response time? The second question is what can you do if you have a shop to market or remarket back to the people that have already purchased from you?
Yes, so like two great questions. The first one, in terms of a response time for, obviously the ideal response time would be to have somebody on a live chat that they could actually have a live conversation with, and they could ask questions about products and things like that. But that's not always feasible for especially small businesses to have somebody on that, all the time. Not all the time, but even during opening hours and, during the week, Monday to Friday. So what, I think at a minimum, most people would expect a reply within 24 hours, that, to an email. And there's some really great software out there as well now that you can add on to your Shopify store that not that funnels all your communication channels into one place. So, if Bob contacts you by Facebook Messenger, but then the following day he emails you, that sits in one, on one screen in one place. That whoever's doing customer support can see all the information about Bob. They can see if he's purchased anything in your store, if that thing has been fulfilled, and how much he spent over his lifetime. And he can see, and all the other channels that he's communicated with you on, so that when you're responding to him, you have a much clearer picture of what his question or his issue is. So there's some great tools out there to help with that. But yeah, response time, I'd say, probably within 24 hours, unless it's the weekend. I think people do expect if they contact you on a Saturday, they might not hear from you until Monday. And then of course, if you do have weekend response times, it's even better. It does seem like a pretty gold star service. But and then your other question in terms of kind of customer retention, and so getting those customers to come back and purchase a second time. It's one of the services that we provide, and there's various things you can do, such as kind of loyalty and reward programs, and you can add them into Shopify as well, earning points and having referral links that people can send out to their friends to give and that give incentives for purchasing. But ultimately, we focus on email marketing. And typically, when somebody shops with you, when they shop online, you get their email address. And as long as they're willing to be marketed to, then we build in a lot of automation with emails to keep the client's brand in the customer's thinking, far into the future, far beyond the actual purchase, and engaging with customers consistently over email. We've found gives the best return on investment, because as regards to there's obviously all various methods of advertising, paying for pay-per-click advertising on social media, on Google Ads and stuff. Email marketing is essentially, you're paying a little bit for your email software potentially, but it so small compared to what you'd be paying for pay-per-click advertising. And it gives such a great return on investment. So that's the tool that we would utilize the most with clients in terms of retaining customers and getting them to come back and purchase a second, third, and keeping them as lifetime customers, or as long as you can. It obviously depends on the product that's been sold, but yeah, that's what we would focus on. And again, it's one of those things that is sometimes overlooked. That people think just build a website, put the products on, and then get some people in and they buy the products, but they don't. Sometimes people don't think about what do you do with that customer afterwards, and wow, you get them come back and purchase a second time, and that's where the customer support and customer retention strategies come into play.
Absolutely, and I think everybody listening to this at some point has bought something online. Maybe it was big, maybe it wasn't, right? And if you needed any support, being available, and level setting that at the beginning, saying these are our contact hours, can really help the customers understand and appreciate, if you don't work weekends, you don't work weekends. Not everybody has the ability to respond over the weekend. You need downtime, right? You need to be able to step away from work at some point and enjoy life. So I think being able to level set that, I think is really great. Shopify is such a powerful platform. It does what it does extremely, extremely well. Digifly should be your first stop if you're thinking of setting up a shop. Patrick and his team are phenomenal. I've gotten some really great insight out of this episode as well, that I'll be able to chat with my prospects and current clients with. And so I know, like, during our pre-show, we were talking a little bit about a special offer that you might have for listeners. So let's hear what that's about.
Yeah, look, we're looking to offer anybody who's interested an absolute free audit of their existing setup. If they have an e-commerce website, we can do a full audit of that. Plus, we're running for anyone that's interested, that's listening to this, we can offer a full free an hour and a half discovery session. So where we would actually sit down with you on a call, go through all your requirements, and actually build out a solution for you with no commitment to building that out. So that's something that we're currently offering to your listeners.
That's amazing value. Patrick knows what he's doing, what he's talking about. Get in touch with him. But speaking of which, how can they get in touch with you? What do they need to do?
Good question. Our website is digifly.ie. That's digifly.ie. And my email, you can contact me directly, is patrick@digifly.ie. Probably the best way to get me, but either that or through the website.
So we're going to have the show notes all put together for this. So go to wowdigital.com/podcast and find this episode. You'll get all the links and email and everything that we've spoken about today, all the great value that Patrick and I have discussed. Thanks again so much, Patrick, for having you on the Nonprofit Digital Success Podcast, and looking forward to connecting with anybody. If you have questions, you can leave comments on the episode page. And until next time, stay successful.
Thank you, David. Absolute pleasure.